All right, let's make sense of all of that. Sean Sullivan and Rachael Bade join me now here at the CBS News DC Bureau. Sean is a congressional reporter with the Washington Post, and Rachael is with Politico. Thank you both for being with me today. And I guess we all need to take a breath after seeing what we just witnessed. The White House essentially spent the week trotting out this message that the president's decision to fire the FBI director was based on the Attorney General's recommendation. And Thursday, you have the president himself coming out and saying, no, I was going to do this all along. Sean, what message does that send from the White House to, you know, the GOP specifically?
A very confusing one. I mean, it's almost like having whiplash when you listen to these different explanations of why this happened. On Capitol Hill this week, the main thing that I heard from lawmakers when I asked them about their reaction to this firing is, why now? Why this timing? They wanted to know more. This wasn't just Democrats. These were Republicans, too, who said, I want to know why the president made this decision at this time. And as you heard earlier this week, the White House essentially gave an explanation that was rooted in the fact that they said that the Deputy Attorney General came to the president with this recommendation. We hear from the president today, I was going to fire him anyway. So this is going to cause a whole lot more questions, I think, from lawmakers who are going to wonder, again, why now? Why did they do this?
What is some of their speculation at the moment? Because essentially having the Attorney General issue and Deputy Attorney General issue their recommendations gives the president cover. The president Thursday doesn't feel like he needs that cover. Why then do they think he's reversed course on that excuse?
Well, the main thing that I hear from Democrats that they're concerned about is that Comey was heading a Justice Department investigation into potential Russian meddling, into whether associates of Trump during the campaign worked with Russia to meddle in this election. And they're worried that this firing was essentially because Comey's investigation was either getting too close to finding something new or that he was trying to ramp this up. And they want proof that that wasn't the case. And when you have these conflicting explanations, I think you're going to see Democrats come out over the weekend and next week and say, look, we're seeing two different explanations here. You know, what's the truth of the matter?
Just to jump in on that, it sounded like there were a bunch of reports, and I believe also my White House colleagues were hearing that the Deputy Attorney General, to your question about why the change all of a sudden with Trump coming out and saying, oh, actually, I was going to do this all of a sudden, he was not happy with this. He was not happy that everybody was pointing to him as the reason that Trump got rid of Comey, when in fact Trump obviously wanted to do this and was looking for a justification. So the Deputy Attorney General, Rosenstein, he was not happy from what we're hearing. And some even reported that he was threatening to quit. And so he wanted that record corrected, that this was not something he was driving. I would also say that, like, the whole conflicting messages here that we're talking about, it makes it seem like something fishy is going on. Why aren't they not just coming out and saying the real reason why they got rid of him, right? So, you know, Trump talked a lot about, and even Speaker Paul Ryan and Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy talked a lot about how Comey had lost the confidence of the FBI agents, the rank and file. But we heard McCabe, the acting FBI director today, say that was not the case. So why are we seeing these conflicting messages? Obviously, Russia has something to do with this, and obviously they don't want to come out and say it point blank.
And it doesn't necessarily help that at the time all of this was happening this week, the president met privately with the Russian foreign minister, with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., without the U.S. press pool in the Oval Office. Russian press was there. Those are the only images that were shared. And it, as you say, there are questions about why. It looks fishy. Some folks on Capitol Hill are saying this is not passing the smell test. And then you have the optics of Russian media having more access to a diplomatic meeting than the U.S. press. But I want to move on to how the White House is characterizing its view of the Russia investigation. Let's just listen here to the White House spokeswoman, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, on where the White House stands as far as how it sees the Russian investigation.
Said that the president has encouraged this investigation into Russia. He wants to see it reach its completion sooner rather than later. How has he encouraged it if he just fired the man who was overseeing the Russian investigation?
There are multiple people that are part of this, and it's not just the FBI. You've got the House committee, the Senate committee. Look, again, the point is, we want this to come to its conclusion. We want it to come to its conclusion with integrity, and we think that we've actually, by removing Director Comey, taken steps to make that happen.
And if you listen closely to what Sanders said there, she feels like the investigation will reach its conclusion thanks to the action that the White House has taken. Essentially, doesn't that look like interference on the part of the White House and a federal investigation?
I would say, I mean, absolutely. Think about, remember Tarmac Gate, when Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac during the Hillary Clinton investigation. Everybody, Trump, including Trump, made a huge deal. This is interference, unbelievable that the Attorney General would meet with the husband of the woman under investigation. Now we're seeing the leader of the campaign that's under investigation asking the FBI director specifically in private meetings, apparently, he talked about this today, am I under investigation? Oh, and can you just let me know if that's the case? And then obviously you're hearing the White House now saying, we're hoping to close this. We're hoping that this pushes us in the direction of closing this investigation that makes us uncomfortable, that we're not happy with. I think that if this were a Democratic administration, every Republican would be up in arms right now.
Sean, is anybody saying the president is doing exactly what he needs to do? He seems decisive, he's taking action, he wants to make all sorts of accomplishments legislatively on other fronts, and he's doing what he can to clean up the Russia investigation. Is there anyone coming out of Capitol Hill today on the president's side on this?
There's not a lot of Republicans who are saying that way with such full force. There are a lot of Republicans who are basically saying, look, the president was within his rights to do this. He is the president. He could fire the FBI head if he wanted to. Well, that's just stating the fact right there. They're basically repeating facts. They're not actually passing judgment on this. I think a lot of Republicans want to move past this. This is not something they want to be dealing with right now. They're trying to do health care. They're trying to do tax reform. You know, they don't want to be talking about this. They don't want to be holding these hearings. They don't want this stuff hanging over their head. And as you mentioned earlier, every time we talk about this, we go back to an issue that seems to, you know, follow Trump everywhere he goes since the campaign, which is what were his ties to Russia? What were the ties between his associates and Russian officials? Every time this happens, it could lead to more doubts in the minds of the American people about, you know, his presidency and about what happened during the campaign. And so Republicans on Capitol Hill don't want to answer those questions. You know, you can tell when you ask them, you know, they sort of look away or try to dart into a subway or something. These are not questions that they want to be asked. They've been asked this for months, and they'd rather move on to other things.
And I know you focus mostly on the Senate side of the houses of Congress. You focus more in the House. They're at recess at the moment. Speaker Paul Ryan, I think, has been on this kind of nationwide tour in a way, promoting what seemed to be the seedlings for a tax reform proposal. The president has said this is his next big initiative after health care. Where are Republicans in the House on their own priorities? And I guess, what is Speaker Ryan trying to do amid all this chaos?
They are losing control fast. I agree with Sean completely in that this is detrimental to the Republican agenda. Just, you know, 48 hours ago, a little more than that, everybody was talking about health care. Republicans have been saying on the campaign trail for more than a decade, we're going to repeal Obamacare. They had this huge first step forward, victory for House Republicans. The Senate was talking about what are we going to do next. That was the thing that was driving the news.
I even heard some grumblings that there might be a kind of compromise between the Senate and the House, grumblings that, hey, there is some common ground, and then this.
And then this. And now this is all anybody wants to talk about. Nobody's talking about health care anymore, except maybe a couple senators, but not a lot of, you know, the nation wants to know what's going on with Russia. Same thing with Paul Ryan you asked about. He is in Ohio. He was in Ohio yesterday doing a tour of a factory trying to sell tax reform, since that's the next big thing House Republicans are going to do. Every Republican and their mother is super excited about tax reform and tax cuts and has wanted to do this for so long, and yet I maybe saw 2 headlines about his tour, because once again, this is a huge distraction for them. It's basically keeping them from doing their work. They're having to answer for all these questions that are being raised by the White House, or being raised by the White House's actions. And this is not the conversation they want to be having.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though. But because this Russia issue is a top headline, top story on the big newscasts, might it prevent Republicans from having to answer the difficult questions about the details? When we saw in the House health care reform plan some of the details emerge, there was a bit of outrage. It hadn't been scored by the CBO, so we don't know the exact cost. A number of Americans to lose health care. But in a way, does this distract from a lot of the really difficult policy items from being front page news? And can that at all be viewed as helpful for the Republican cause?
Maybe temporarily. They're going to have to answer these questions at some point, and I think when you're spending time on Capitol Hill, you know, there's only so many legislative days. We're talking about Congress. This is, you know, a body of government that takes the entire month of August off, so every day is a valuable resource. So these are days that they're not spending working out these differences. These are days not spent finding answers to these difficult questions on healthcare. And then when we move past this Comey stuff in a couple months, we're going to be asking these lawmakers, well, what's the answer to this question? And if they still don't have an answer, they'll look even worse than they do right now, I think.
Yeah. And is there a sense of nervousness among vulnerable Republicans? Because there seems to be a calculation with Republicans in Congress, which is how closely do I align myself with the president, and at which point, which tweet, which off-the-wall comment do I distance myself from? Do you see a change in that calculation?
Yeah, I mean,
lately?
I think that on the campaign trail in 2016, a lot of more moderate centrist Republicans from swing states never fully embraced him. Right now, a lot of them are running away. I think that
John Kasich is doing the media rounds as a kind of, you know, governor with his own independent voice.
Absolutely. Carlos Curbelo, who is a Republican in a swing state down in Miami. Who else? Mike Kaufman in Colorado. Both have come out in the past like 24 hours and said, I support a special prosecutor, an independent commission to investigate the Russia probe. A lot of the folks that are coming out and saying this are from those sorts of swing state districts where they have to show that we're not too closely aligned with Trump. And the truth is, like, Trump right now is toxic, and he's toxic for Democrats. He's absolutely going to be toxic, more and more toxic for Republicans, I think, as we go on.
What about that question of a special prosecutor? It is something Democrats are pushing for even more forcefully now. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has not indicated as of Thursday that that's something he wants to do, but does that become the measurement for re-election?
It might for a lot of these Republicans, and I think that is when you start to see this debate shift. If we see a lot more Republicans calling for a special prosecutor, essentially sounding like Democrats and saying, we need to take this investigation out of the hands of the Justice Department, we need to put it in a totally separate vehicle that's totally separate from the government, that's when I think you can look at the situation and say, wow, you know, the dam is sort of broken here, and Republicans are talking like Democrats. Right now, it still seems to be a handful of Republicans, certainly a growing handful, that are calling for a special prosecutor, that are calling for a separate investigation. But look, in a month or 2 months, if we see 20, 30, 40 Republicans, then I think it tells us that they are really, really worried that if they do not show some independence from this investigation, if they do not try to hold Trump to account a little bit more, they're going to lose their seats in 2018.
So it seems as though the question over the next few months for Republicans will be, what is their public position on a special prosecutor, and what is their deliverable to show constituents that, hey, this is why you got a Republican in the White House and the Republican Party to control both chambers of Congress. Just quickly in our final minute here, what is the one policy issue they feel like they will gain a score with this year?
I think most Republicans I talk to feel like they actually are going to get their Obamacare replacement through. Now, is that a score? It depends on which Republican you're talking to, because a lot of them do not particularly like this plan. I think tax reform, everybody wants to say, yes, we're going to do it. I am very skeptical, and I have Republican sources who are very skeptical they can do it as well.
Sean, what do you think?
I agree with Rachel totally. I think they've basically staked the entire GOP re-election campaign on health care. Yeah. Looks like they're going to get something done. But again, whether that something is something voters like or hate, we'll find out in November of 2018.
All right, Sean Sullivan and Rachael Bade picking a great time to work in the district. Never a slow moment here. But Sean with the Washington Post, Rachael with Politico, both the congressional correspondents. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.